Hello, Patreon followers, blog followers, friends, and family out there. Andromeda Ross here, System Andromeda, and this is my review of 2019 and the review of the 2010 decade. Wow, it is definitely the end of a decade. It definitely feels like it, doesn't it? And I felt like 2019 really kind of brought that sense of endings into the whole thing. Not just the decade, obviously, and the year, but the types of milestones that I had in my life, the things that I saw out in social media, movies, things of that nature, just in general, it definitely feels like kind of an ending. So, I'll just kind of briefly kind of go over the last year or so and some of the milestones before I jump into the different projects and things that I've been working on. So first of all, there were a few milestones for me that really marked the end of something. I had a major surgery. It was one of those sort of life improvement types of surgeries, and I definitely feel the effects of that. It's definitely a life change, and it's a good life change, so I'm very happy about that. There was a relative of mine who passed on in this last year, and I said goodbye to a business that I had been doing. So it definitely felt like 2019 was about saying goodbye in a lot of ways. So now I'm going to just tell you a little bit about System Andromeda. System Andromeda was something that I started back in 2008 after I'd been traveling in the latter half of 2007 through the United States and Europe. And when I got back, I decided I didn't want to do what everyone had been telling me to do, which was you have to pick one path and you need to stick with it. You have to specialize, you have to do just this thing. And I had tried, I was like, well, maybe this is what I really want to do, and maybe this is what I really want to do. And none of the things, I don't want to say they didn't stick. It was more along the lines that the timing wasn't always right with them, and the timing for something else would pop up and be better, and then that would wane. And so eventually I just got to the idea of like, I don't want to choose. I don't want to have to say I am this one thing and only this one thing. And so I decided not to anymore. I decided it was stupid. And since then, we have terms like Renaissance Soul and multi-potentialite. So people are following multiple paths. So starting System Andromeda back in 2008 and 2009 was really me saying, this is how I'm going to do this. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Andromeda Galaxy and astronomical designations, little symbols and things like that, a lot of people are. The Andromeda symbol is basically a little oval with the arms coming out in a spiral, because Andromeda is a spiral galaxy. And there are 7 arms on this. And that particular symbol has been used to designate other galaxies, but it's particularly known for the Andromeda Galaxy. And I thought, well, okay, that'll be my symbol, right? That is the symbol for System Andromeda. And it had 7 arms to it. And I thought, what are the projects that I really want to do? What are the things I'm really interested in? And the idea was that I really wanted to have kind of a lifestyle freedom and freedom from a schedule where I wasn't having to work for someone else and go on auditions and risk losing the job, that job, so that I could pay my rent, so that I could also follow my passions. So I put together these 7 different projects that I hoped would make me some money, and they came out to be the following. Writing. So for the writing projects, it was, things like doing ghost writing for people, doing editing, proofreading, and of course, writing my own stuff, novels, screenplays, that sort of thing, and doing the blogs that I do. Performance, of course, because that's what my degree is in. I have a bachelor's in dramatic arts, mostly theater, but I also have trained in film, and film is what I wanted to do. And my focus was in acting. So performance could be either acting, or it could have been dance or singing, that sort of thing, just movement in general. photography, which was something that I had gotten into about 2 or 3 years prior to starting this. It actually was probably closer to 5 years. And I had found that I really enjoyed it. I'd always seen things through a camera lens because I watched so many movies anyway, that it felt kind of like a natural progression. Once I got the camera in my hand, I kind of couldn't put it down. So photography, that became the third branch. There was translation, because I was really interested in being a translator for, Spanish or German or something like that. I love languages. I love linguistics. And then kind of alongside that, another facet to that would have been tutoring in ESL. So English as a second language or English as a foreign language, and being a teacher of that. So that was one. Another one was for design or creating this boutique. I liked making my own jewelry. You can see right here a couple of the earrings that I've made. This necklace. A lot of times it was a matter of, I wanted certain types of jewelry and I could never find them at a price point that I was good with. Of course, I'd love to see some of the more interesting pieces out there, but they always cost like $200 for a pair of earrings. And I'm like, yeah, I can't afford that. So I decided to start making my own jewelry. And a lot of people were like, wow, that's really cool stuff. I would love to buy some. I was like, great. And I also created this little leather cuff. It was my original leather cuff design. And it's just, you slide it on and then you just tie it with this lovely little kind of lacing here. And yes, you can do it one-handed. So I created all of these things, and I so I had a kind of a design aspect where I could do custom or open a store. And then once you kind of put all those 6 other things together, I had this one other one because I'd done so many different life paths. I'd been in corporate environments and academic environments. I'd been in nonprofits. I'd done, worked with medical people. I'd done all kinds of different things, engineers and so forth. And so life coaching kind of became one of my things because I wanted to help people with their resumes to find different jobs that they might want. I wanted to help people follow their dreams. So that became the 7th branch. Since that time, it has evolved, and one branch will change into something else, or I'll combine a couple of branches or kind of specialize out from one particular branch. And I've always kind of kept the 7 branches, and I'm hoping I'll still be able to do that, even though my focus has narrowed quite a bit over the last decade or so, which has basically come back to focus around the idea of film. So that can take many different things. Of course, there is the concept of film itself, like, before we had digital cameras and things like that, photography and movies were done on actual little film, So film in that regard, film in the fact that I love movies. Like, I've never stopped loving movies, and I write a blog about it, and I love acting, and I love writing screenplays. So that all kind of fell in with it into this idea of like really what my focus has always been and what I've always really loved and been passionate about, aside from travel, which is just part of my soul, is film, working in film, working with film. So I kind of have come down to one path, but within that path, there's a lot of little mini paths. So as I'm moving forward, it is evolving again, but it's basically moving towards these things. So that's the last decade of System Andromeda. Now, System Andromeda today, we have a bunch of different things going on. I've moved a lot of things for the life coaching aspect and kind of sharing what I do over to a platform called Patreon. And if you're not familiar with Patreon, I'll talk a little bit about it at the end of this video. But it's basically what I've been doing. I've been doing a lot more on that end of things in terms of engaging with my audience and in terms of things like the life coaching and so forth. For social media this year, I came up with the idea of finding out what all of the days of and months of whatever were, like Cancer Awareness Month, or, National Sleep Day, finding out what all of these different types of days are and how I can incorporate what I do into any of those things and use that as part of my social media campaign. So I made an entire calendar. Last year got crazy. You might have noticed from the milestones I talked about, but there were quite a few days in there and months and things like that I got to put some stuff out. And I'm hoping that will only increase in the coming years, kind of playing with that format, in addition to using social media, to catch candid moments, and of course, to promote the work that I do. So speaking of the things that evolved over the 10 years and are changing now, one of them is the Arcadian Gypsy Boutique. It's basically this boutique I created on Etsy. It's an Etsy store. And it was just this idea of like wanderlust and different types of things, mythos and so forth brought into it. And I really loved it. I really did. But it became a thing. I'm not a salesperson. I like the making of stuff, but the selling of stuff, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I'll sell if it's educational. Like when I worked at the music store and I was like, well, you want this guitar because it's a better quality, and that other one's going to fall apart. So you're spending less money now, but you are actually getting a product that you're going to have to replace soon anyway. Whereas this will last you much longer and it only costs you like a few dollars more. So I would go with that. That's my kind of sales pitch. Otherwise, it's like, there's some stuff, enjoy. That's the price. Go ahead and buy it, And so I'm not really much of a salesman, and doing the social media for it and going to events, exhausting. And I kind of decided I didn't want to do it anymore, but I was so loath to get rid of it. It was such a cool idea, Arcadian Gypsy, right? And that was also one of the other problems, because gypsy is a slur for a lot of people, the Romany people who were known as gypsies, and gypsy is considered like you're a dirty thief or something like that. And that's unfortunate, because for me, it conjures up, again, these ideas of wanderlust, and it's sort of magical and mysterious and spiritual and very cool. And there's a lot of people who feel that way, which is why you see people who using the term and not having any clue that they're basically using a slur. And some of them are not necessarily listening when they're being told. And I felt really conflicted about that. Like, on the one hand, it was kind of like you wanted to take it back, like take that term back and own it as something beautiful. But I'm not Romany, I'm not the people who have been persecuted with this terminology for hundreds of years. So I don't really have the right. And it's kind of hypocritical for me to say, want people to be aware and understanding when certain terminology that I don't like is used, and not do the same for somebody else. So that started to be a really conflicting thing, and it kind of soured the feel for me. And I just decided, maybe it's time to say goodbye to this. Maybe this is just the universe telling me, let's end this. So I thought, okay, maybe this is what this is. And as I went through this last year, I had tried doing a really heavy social media campaign in the fall holiday season of 2018, so like a year ago. And it was zilch, zip nada. Etsy, as it turns out, is so oversaturated that it's really hard for people to find stuff. And it's hard for people to get their stuff out there and not get lost in the shuffle. So I, like a lot of other creators, ended up not making really any money that particular season. And I said, if by the time I got towards the end of the season, I said, if I don't make anything out of this, I'm ending Arcadian Gypsy next year. And that's exactly what happened. So I said, okay, I'm ending it next year. I'm going to give it my all that I can. I'm not going to kill myself over it, but I'm going to do what I can with it for the next year. And then I'm saying goodbye. And as the time got closer, I was like, yes, okay, I definitely am doing the right thing. I don't want to do this. But as I started to think, I'm not doing this anymore, I started creating again, which had become a problem. I was trying to sell stuff, and suddenly I didn't feel like making anything new. So it was kind of funny because I was like, well, I don't want to like completely say goodbye. I love the Arcadian gypsy motif. And I said, okay, what if I evolve it, and it becomes a custom store and just a platform for me to share the things that I like to make. And I thought, okay, well, then I need a new name because the gypsy thing, it's just too politically fraught. And, I want to show some solidarity with other people that have gone through what amounts to a load of bullshit for no reason. So I thought, okay, let's find a new name. It's Arcadian something else, right? And I came up with Arcadian Nomad. So it's no longer the Arcadian Gypsy Boutique. It's just Arcadian Nomad. And I'm keeping the Etsy store open for the time being. I may close it at some point, but it's just there for custom work. So I'll share things that I've made. And if someone says, hey, I really like what you make, would you make me something? And how much would it cost? I will be like, yes, I can do that. So that's Arcadian Gypsy. And that ended at the end of this year, 2019, on midnight. I changed everything over, like pretty much as soon as the clock struck midnight. I was changing stuff over after we'd done the whole toasting and everybody else had gone to bed. I was changing the names on all my social media, all that stuff. So that is official. Arcadian Gypsy is now Arcadian Nomad. So Tricky Fish Photography is what became of all of my crazy, wild, like experimentation with the medium of still photography and film, because that's how I started out. I didn't start on digital right away. The first camera that someone gave me was a film camera, and you learn on a film camera. You really do, because you can't take a million shots. You have to be really specific with your film and use it. And if you're going to say this is a learning experience and I'm going to experiment a little, you know that film is costing you, and you won't get to see how it looks until it comes out. So that was a cool learning experience. I really liked learning that way. And of course I have a digital camera now, and I actually use my smartphone a lot. Smartphone cameras have gotten so good, it's ridiculous. And I use it a lot for a lot of my stuff. But the main thing from 2019, after it's evolved along the way and stayed with System Andromeda, is that I finally had my first show. I had prints made. I got bookmarks made, which was the first time thing. I'd actually gotten some stickers of a number of my images done for 2018, that last quarter there, for my Patreon folks and also to sell. And so I had put together a whole bunch of different, products, and I got to do them in an artistic show. And I've done a couple of other events. So that was basically the main news from Tricky Fish Photography for 2019. And to round out the decade, is I finally got to have my first showing of my work. And I'm looking forward to doing more of that in the new year, and we'll see how that all goes. I'm going to be doing a little more experimentation. So. I didn't do a lot of travel this last year. I did actually get an opportunity to go on a Colorado trip, however, which ended up being fantastic because I was doing it for research for a book. It's set in the Old West, and I'll actually talk a little bit more about that in my writing section. But so I got a chance to go to Colorado. There was a beautiful place called Steamboat Springs. And it's just kind of a resort town, kind of stuck up in the kind of north central area of Colorado. And from there, I was able to branch out and go see a number of different things. I went down farther into the Rockies area, down in the Leadville, Frisco area, which is a lot of old mining towns. And so I got to see some of the history of that, and that was really cool. And I got to go out west to the Sandwash Basin area, which is where there is a large herd. It's not super huge, but there's a decent sized herd of wild Mustangs out there, and I got to photograph them, and that was so cool. I'll come back to those because there's a little thing about advocacy about that. I got to go north. There is, right over the border in Wyoming, there is this wonderful, fantastically done museum that's basically about the Old West in that area, in the Wyoming and Colorado and all of that. And there was so much great information. I can't wait to go back there. But they were so helpful, so wonderful. As far as the trip itself, it was wonderful. It was relaxing, and it was in October, that very last few days of September into October, which that's the straddling the September October changeover is their fall color change season. So I got to take all these wonderful colors of like aspens and birch trees and things like that that were doing like these mad gorgeous yellows, and other colors and stuff like that in there. It was so beautiful. One thing that the trip to Colorado did for me is it kind of reminded me about this blog that I do called Ransomed Roads, which is supposed to be mostly about travel, but also about lifestyle freedom and that concept of doing work that we love so that we can go and out there, that work-life balance, that elusive work-life balance everybody wants, and have that lifestyle freedom and freedom from schedule and freedom from an office, what have you. And it's still evolving, and I had to put it on hold this last year. I really didn't write in it at all because I had so much going on. Um, and I'm going to get to a little bit of that in a moment. But one of the things that I'm wanting it to evolve into is I want it to very much be a lifestyle freedom blog. Ransomed Roads, it's this concept of being able to take back the road, being able to take back my own time. And so it's focusing on things like travel, it's focusing on things like tiny houses. And now I'm kind of adding into it farm life because our family farm, I am out here living on it. And I really love it because as much as I enjoy having access to the city, I like being able to be alone and have quiet and have nature around me. And I get that here. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is what we're going to do with the farm, because my grandma actually passed last year and she had been the person who was living here and she owned it. And now that it's kind of passed into the rest of the family, it's a matter of like, how are we going to do this? Because I'm not having kids and I don't know if I'll be passing it on to someone else in the family or what I'm going to do. But one thing I think I'd really like to do is some kind of advocacy and doing some like organic farming and some sustainable living types of things, like maybe getting bees out here. I would love, dearly love, one of the things that I'm kind of interested in doing advocacy for, and this is because of that Colorado trip, is wild horses. They're losing land and they don't have great environments to live in anymore because they're overpopulated. And so the government, which is in charge of this, is facing decisions of like, okay, can we get people to take some off our hands? Like going for like, I think pretty ridiculously cheap, like take these horses, just take them, or culling the herd altogether. And as much as I understand the concept and I understand where sometimes it's necessary to do that, I just feel like there's a better way, especially when I hear stories about things like in Wyoming. I think that there's a situation where they might be losing the land because there's corporations that want to buy some of it up. And I'm like, wait, that's government land. So wait, what? So it bears more research looking into, but it's something, if you are into advocacy, especially in terms of animals, to keep on your radar. So, but how great would it be to have wild Mustangs out here? It'd be so cool, but I don't think we have enough land. But yeah, we'll see what happens. And then in terms of all that, one of the reasons I'm able to do this is because I found out last year that I was going to be doing allergy shots, and that unlike I had originally thought, I thought that they were a 1 to 3 year kind of thing. They're more like a 3 to 5 year kind of thing. And I was like, oh, so, and you have to stay in the area. It's not like you go someplace else, and you can hop around, all that. I had to stay in the area because I was getting them at first like twice a week, and then it's like once a week, and then eventually it gets to like once every couple, 3, and then like a month or something. So it spreads out, but like at first it's pretty intensive. And so that plus the surgery, all the other kinds of things that I was going through with my health, it just made sense for me to stay even past this time. And also with reconnecting with my family in general, which has been, interesting at times, but, that's what family is all about anyway. And as far as my other health is concerned, one of the things I've been wanting to do is get into better shape. I have exertional asthma, which is probably allergy induced. because my lung capacity is pretty good. So, doing the inhaler thing so that I can get some cardio in and lose some weight, get in better shape, tone, all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's really about creating a lifestyle. Honestly, I don't remember a time when I wasn't writing. I've been writing since I was a small kid, and even had a little published book when I was a kid. It was kind of cute. It was about flying unicorns, of course. But as I've gotten older, I've continued to write. It's one of the things that even when I was working on other paths, writing, it was always that thing that I came back to, writing. And so, eventually you get to the point where your writing skills are like, hey, can you create this thing for us? And it's like, yeah, I can do that. And I was also blogging at the time. I started blogging shortly after I moved down to Austin, and now I have 4 blogs that I have trouble keeping up with because time. But I also do professional writing, clients, blog writing mostly, but I've also done some ghost writing. I've ghost written a book, all kinds of different things. So yeah, and one of the things I wanted to get into last year, and it didn't pan out because of, again, family stuff time, was proofreading. I've been doing proofreading for different clients and things like that, but I really wanted to kind of take it to the next level and become more of a proofreader so I could concentrate more on my own writing. So that's something that I'm hoping to take into this next year. I did a lot of the research last year, and I want to kind of really enact it this year. So we'll see how that goes. But one of the main things that happened this year, I kind of started off doing a little bit of writing on my blogs, Lost Title Cards. I'll come back to that. But I didn't quite finish up. And I ended up really focusing on trying to finish this novel I started, that was about 8 years ago, close to 9 now, so a little under a decade. And it's a story that I'd had knocking around in the back of my head and kind of tentatively writing random scenes here and there for about 20 years. And it's a romance novel set in the Old West. And I was like, I'm going to finish this year. This year I'm going to finish it. So I was getting ready to prepare to participate, we'll say, in NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. Every November for 30 days, you write a 50,000 word novel. Now, because I'd already started this novel and got about 33,000 words way back in I wasn't able to compete. But I did do a lot of prep work throughout the year. All of the stuff that, you don't know what you don't know as a writer, or anything, any endeavor that you go into where you are trying to get better at a particular craft or trade. You don't know what you don't know. And it's a learning curve. And I had learned so much in the almost decade since I'd first started writing the book. So going back and looking at what I'd written, I'm like, this is a mess. And I decided it was time to really sit down and hash out, what are the scenes going to be? What's this going to be? Because the first time I worked on it, it was just write, just get the word count in there, just write. And that kind of worked. And it was good to kind of rip that Band-Aid off of, oh my God, I'm writing a novel. But it didn't get finished, and it was a mess. So this year, I kind of started early spring, I want to say, kind of going back to basics, doing writing exercises as it pertained with my novel writing, to my specific novel, breaking it down, just playing with the chapters a little bit, figuring out what are all the points that need to be hit, what needs to happen here, all this stuff. So I really got deep into what are the bones of this story and how am I going to write it out and what are the scenes going to look like. Unfortunately, I didn't get to finish the novel. I did participate in NaNoWriMo in terms of I started on November 1st, but a whole lot of things happened. If you have seen my Patreon, you can go back there and get the whole story there, but I didn't get to finish. However, what I did get done, I did add on to my word count, and considering that I cut about half of what I originally had and then added to that, I probably wrote close to another 30,000 words. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with what I've got. And I will be continuing on. I think in this year, I'm going to be trying to. There's a lot going on this year, but I'm really hoping I can finish it by next NaNoWriMo later this year. As far as other writing is concerned, I have another blog called Changeling, and that's the ongoing journey of an Aspie, and that's something I haven't had time to write on this year, and I'm not sure I'm going to, or last year, and I'm not sure I'm going to this year either. We shall see, but it's my advocacy blog for autism because I am on the spectrum. So we'll see what happens with that, but right now I'm not looking to spend time on it this year. What I am looking to spend time on, and will be kind of pushing us into the next section of this video, is the Lost Title Cards, which I started the year doing an M. Night Shyamalan kind of a retrospective, kind of like check out his work, because a lot of people would like just bag on him and give him crap and be like, oh, he's like the worst director in his movies, and I'm like, wait a minute, he was like a darling director for a while. They were saying he was the next Hitchcock, and I'm like, why y'all hating on him? And to be honest, The Last Airbender was, no, that was upsetting to watch, but there's a lot of really great movies he's done. And I was like, I stayed a fan of Shyamalan and always had faith that he was going to come back and do more cool stuff. And thankfully, he finally got someone to let him finish off the trilogy he had been trying to do, which was based on the original movie he did, Unbreakable, which is an original comic book origin story, which is actually my favorite original comic book origin story, or comic book story at all, because of what he did with it. It's just a beautiful, moody, very wonderful piece. All of these like surprises and things. It's just a fantastic work. And then he did Split, which is about this James McAvoy doing split personalities. And he did, or it's actually called something identity disorder. I can't think of the first word, but it's got a new name now. It's not multiple personalities anymore. And he did a fantastic job. The movie's really good, and it made people go, oh, he can do good movies. It's like, yeah, he always could. Like, yeah. So I was excited because Glass was going to be the final installation. It was coming out in January of 2019, this last year. So I was like, I'm going to write for the whole month. It's going to be about M. Night Shyamalan. And I was able to get some of that done, but not all of it. And I was very pleased with the movie, and I'll get into that in a few minutes. But yeah, so I started to work on it, and then that fell off because life happened, stuff with my grandma that kind of took up a large part of the year into her passing, and other projects I was working on, just life in general. And so that fell off, but I think it's going to be figuring a lot more heavily, and that will be revealed soon as to why. But it's something that I'm very excited about getting back into. And so if you are into movies, check my blog out. It's called The Lost Title Cards, and it's at thelosttitlechards.blogspot.com. And I'm going to have links for all these things. Don't worry about it. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited about getting back to this blog because I'm going to be focusing a lot more heavily on movies. So moving forward from here, there's basically, for me, System Andromeda and the evolution of it up through this point has been about coming full circle. And for a while, it actually like put this one aspect down and said, I may not even ever come back to this. I really questioned whether I would come back to it, but I've come full circle, and I feel like I've gotten a lot of life experience that has just kind of bolstered me and solidified this is part of what I really want to be doing, and that's acting. I'm getting back into acting, or trying to at any rate. It's what my degree was in. I'm back kind of on my original turf from when I first started, so I still have some connections. We'll see how that pans out. But there's a lot of prepping to do. I'm working on weight loss and toning and just basically getting better fortitude for my body to handle this experience because I'm older, there's always going to be difficulties and stuff like that, but I definitely feel more prepared for it at this age than I did when I was much younger. So I'm excited for that. In addition to acting, I will also be working on my writing and my proofreading and editing stuff. I do want to finish and publish that novel. I'd like to at least finish it this year. So we'll see how that goes. Tricky Fish Photography. I want to continue experimentation. I'm also kind of doing a clean house. There's a lot of projects that I like. I went someplace and I did this, or I did a particular style or something like that, and I never got it up on social media or up onto my website. So it's a lot of clean house and like, let's get this stuff out there. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. Ransomed Roads, again, kind of, putting up some of the previous projects, doing that sort of clean house thing there as well. And working on like some local posts, because I'm here for a while and I may get to do some travel, but mostly I'm going to be in this area. So kind of featuring some of the areas of the Midwest that, some people call it the flyover states, and I understand why, because it's one of the reasons why I left in the first place, but there are some cool things to see here. And I'm hoping to highlight some of those so that when people come through, they know where to go. And then, of course, hopefully, again, more travel. Lost title cards. Again, I want to be more involved with that now that I'm getting back into acting and I'm getting more involved with film, and it's really my focus. And I love talking about movies, as you can tell from that last segment. I'm very excited to get back on Lost Title Cards and really make that blog a lot more interesting and get more stuff out there. I've got a few different little ideas, like a 1-minute review or when I first come out of a movie and just the little highlights from that. Some stuff about classic movies because I love classic movies, sort of behind the scenes stuff. I have some different ideas. And then of course, just talking about movies in general, maybe even doing some vlogging. It hasn't always gone well, so we'll see about that. As far as my life stuff is concerned, I'm going to keep doing what I do. I live out here at the farm, so there's going to be a lot of farm life type stuff. Again, I'll probably try and add that to Ransomed Roads. And then there's, health stuff, just getting in better shape, taking care of myself, self-care, all that stuff. Okay, so just real quick, if you are unfamiliar with Patreon, Patreon is a platform for creators and artists to bring people who love their work that they put out there to the public on a regular basis, and basically kind of support them. It's basically a subscription or membership-based type of platform. So as you're enjoying this person's work, you are contributing to it. Even if you're not able to buy like a whole painting or a novel or something like that, you are contributing to it and the work that you see that they put out there. So if you are interested at all, if you like what you've seen here, I do encourage you to go check out my Patreon, which I have put onto my main blog page here, which is where you will generally be seeing this video, but also on my Patreon blog. It'll be showing up on my social media, all that stuff. Just click on the link for Patreon and go check it out. The nice thing about it is that you can sign up through your Google or your Facebook accounts, which means that you're not having to sign up for a whole new thing. They make it that simple so that you're not necessarily getting all this stuff. And you don't necessarily have to contribute money at this point. At this point, am more interested in gaining followers. And as you like my stuff, if you decide, yeah, I want to contribute, you can then decide to go into a particular tier. And these tiers go from like, everybody makes their own tier system, and it goes anywhere from $1 up to hundreds or thousands of dollars. So there's a tier for everybody. And I just would love to see y'all come join me on this crazy journey that I'm on. So that's Patreon, and I hope to see you guys come on out. And this has been my review for 2019 and the decade of 2010s. I'm Andromeda Ross, System Andromeda, and I will see you throughout this next year. Thanks, and take care, and exit stage left.